The Galactic Council had been at peace for 12,000 years. Every species in the known galaxy belonged to this great union. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and solved problems through talking. War was something from ancient times, a dark period that nobody wanted to remember. The council members had evolved beyond violence. They built beautiful cities, created amazing art, and lived in harmony. Then everything changed. The Vrathri came from the empty space between galaxies. Nobody knew where they originated or why they traveled so far. They were insect-like creatures that moved as one mind. Millions of them acted with perfect coordination like a single giant organism. They did not want to talk or trade. They only wanted to consume everything in their path. The first world fell in 3 days. The Council sent their defense fleet, but those ships were designed for ceremony and patrol, not real combat. The elegant vessels with their decorative hulls and advanced shields crumbled against the Vrathri swarm. The second world fell even faster. Then the third, fourth, and fifth. Ambassador Kelrith stood before the emergency council meeting. His blue skin flickered with light, showing his distress. He was from the Centauri species, known for their calm and logical thinking. But today he could not stay calm. "We have lost 47 worlds in just 3 weeks, Kelrith said, his voice shaking. "Our fleets cannot stop them. Millions are dead. Billions more will die if we do not find a solution. We need warriors, not diplomats." High Chancellor Vemro listened from her seat. Her body was made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the chamber. She had led the council for 200 years and never faced a problem she could not solve through negotiation. But the Vrathri would not negotiate. "There are no warriors left in civilized space," Vemro replied sadly. "We eliminated such violent tendencies from our societies thousands of years ago. We are a peaceful people now." "Not all species are peaceful," Kelrith said quietly. "There is one world we refuse to allow into the council. A death world classified as too dangerous. Class 12 gravity, deadly predators, unstable weather, and a species that somehow survived all of it." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew which world he meant. "You speak of Earth," Vemra said. "You speak of the humans." "I speak of survival," Kelrith answered. "We quarantined them because they were too violent. We watched them from a distance and saw wars, conflicts, and aggression. We decided they were not ready for galactic society. But now I believe they are exactly what we need." The debate lasted for hours. Many council members argued against contacting such a primitive and violent species. Others said they had no choice. The Vrathri would not stop. Every day of delay meant more deaths. Finally, they voted. The decision was unanimous. They would break their own laws and contact Earth, asking for military help from a species they had deemed too dangerous to join them. Captain Ryan Mitchell was stationed on Luna Base 7 when the message arrived. He was 42 years old, a career military officer who had seen action in several Earth conflicts. He had joined the military like his father and grandfather before him. War was in his blood. The holographic projection appeared in the command center without warning. Ambassador Kelrith's image floated in the air, speaking words that Mitchell could barely believe. Aliens were real. They needed help. They were facing extinction. "We require military assistance against a threat we cannot defeat," Kelrith explained. "We have studied your species from a distance. You have the experience and capability we lack. Will you help us?" Mitchell did not hesitate. "Show us your enemy. Show us what you are facing." Within hours, Earth's military analysts were studying the Vrathri advance. The data was clear and terrifying. 47 worlds gone. Billions dead. Enemy forces numbering in the hundreds of millions, maybe more. Standard Council weapons were almost useless against them. The Earth Coalition government called an emergency session. Presidents, prime ministers, and military leaders from every nation gathered. They watched the data, saw the destruction, and understood the threat. If the Vrathri conquered the galaxy, Earth would eventually be next. The decision was made quickly. Earth would send help. They called it the Expeditionary Fleet, 20 warships, 15,000 military personnel, the best soldiers, pilots, and officers Earth could provide. Admiral Patricia Hayes would command from the carrier EDF Valiant. She was 55 years old, tough as steel, and had commanded fleets in the Pacific Theater during the Resource Wars. The ships were ready within 2 weeks. Unlike the beautiful Council vessels, human warships were designed for one purpose only. They had heavy armor, powerful weapons, and efficient systems. No decorative elements, no luxury quarters, no wasted space. Just the cold mathematics of war. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the destroyer EDF Hammer, watching Earth grow smaller on the viewscreen. His wife and 2 children were down there. He had promised them he would come back. Now, looking at the blue planet fading into the distance, he wondered if that was a promise he could keep. "All systems ready," reported the communications officer. "Fleet reports ready for jump." Admiral Hayes's voice came through on all channels, reaching every ship, every crew member. "This is Admiral Hayes. We are about to enter unknown space to fight an unknown enemy. We are doing this because people need help, and we have the ability to help them. The galaxy has been at peace for thousands of years. They forgot how to fight. We never did. Show them what humanity can do. For Earth, for survival. All ships jump on my mark." The countdown began. Mitchell gripped the railing, feeling the ship vibrate as the jump drives powered up. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this their entire careers, even if they never expected to fight aliens. "Jump in 3, 2, 1, mark." The stars stretched and vanished. The fleet jumped through space, leaving the safety of the solar system behind. They carried with them Earth's hope and determination. They were heading toward a war that would test everything humanity had learned through centuries of conflict. The Council had sent for warriors. They were about to discover what Deathworld warriors could really do. The galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet emerged from the jump near Kelrith Prime. What they found made even the experienced warriors pause. 3 Council defense cruisers floated dead in space, their hulls torn open and burning. Debris from destroyed orbital stations created clouds of metal and bodies. Below, on the planet's surface, fires burned across entire continents. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Blake from her station on the EDF Valiant. She had trained for combat scenarios her whole career, but nothing prepared her for seeing the scale of real destruction. Admiral Hayes studied the tactical display with cold focus. Red indicators showed dozens of Vrathri ships in orbit and hundreds more landing craft descending to the planet. All ships battle formation. Launch fighters. All weapons free. Engage the enemy. The human fleet moved with precision that shocked the Council observers watching from a rescue ship. Council vessels moved gracefully, banking through space like dancers. Human ships moved like predators. They burned their engines hard, using every thruster to get into position fast. They did not care about looking elegant. They cared about killing the enemy. Captain Ryan Mitchell commanded the destroyer EDF Hammer. He watched the Vrathri ships on his screen and felt a cold anger. These things had destroyed worlds and killed billions. Target the largest cluster of enemy ships. Load railguns. Fire when ready. The hammer shook as its railguns fired. Solid metal projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds. They crossed the distance in seconds and hit the Vrathri vessels. Unlike energy weapons that could be blocked by shields, the metal slugs just punched straight through. The enemy ships exploded or broke apart. The Vrathri had adapted to Council weapons over months of fighting. They had never faced anything like human weapons. They had never faced anything like human tactics. Jake Morrison led his fighter squadron, called Death's Head Unit, into the swarm of enemy craft. The Vrathri moved in perfect coordination, their hive mind allowing them to act as one. But this made them predictable. "Break into pairs, attack pattern 7, Morrison ordered. His wingman, Lieutenant Danny Cruz, stayed close as they dove toward the enemy formation. The Vrathri expected the humans to evade or retreat when outnumbered. Instead, the human fighters accelerated directly at them, firing controlled bursts and breaking away at the last possible moment. It was crazy by any logical standard. But it worked. Got 4 of them, Cruz reported. These bugs do not know what hit them. On the Valiant, Admiral Hayes watched the battle unfold. The humans were winning, but the planet below still had enemy forces. Launch the Marines. Colonel Kevin Andrews, your people are cleared for ground assault. Get down there and save whoever you can. Colonel Andrews had been waiting for those words. His Marines, 800 of the toughest soldiers Earth could provide, loaded into drop ships with speed born from endless training and real combat experience. The Vrathri had fought Council security forces before. Those forces would land, set up defensive positions, and call for support. The humans did something different. They dropped directly into the worst combat zones, established control through sheer aggression, and started hunting the enemy. Sergeant Lisa Grant kicked open the door of a civilian shelter where frightened Kelrathi families huddled. United States Marines, we are here to get you out. 3 Vrathri warriors turned toward her. They were huge, twice the size of a human, with armored carapaces and razor-sharp limbs. They clicked their mandibles in communication and moved to attack. Grant's squad opened fire with plasma rifles. The weapons were brutal, designed to kill efficiently. The Vrathri warriors died before they understood what killed them. They had thought these small, soft creatures would be easy prey. They were wrong. Move, move, move! Grant shouted at the civilians. We are taking you to safety. Stay close and keep up. In orbit, the tide had turned completely. The Vrathri had swept aside Council fleets for months. But now they faced an enemy that fought with a ferocity they could not comprehend. Human ships pressed their advantages, ignored damage to themselves, and coordinated with a flexibility no hive mind could match. The hammer took several hits. Hull breaches opened on 3 decks. But Captain Mitchell kept his ship in the fight. Damage control, seal what you can. Engineering, keep the weapons online. We are not done. His crew worked through the damage without panic. They had drilled for this. They knew their jobs. The guns kept firing. Within 6 hours, the human fleet had destroyed 70% of the Vrathri forces in the system. Within 12 hours, they had cleared orbit completely. Within 24 hours, the last enemy ground forces were being hunted down by Marine squads. Ambassador Kelrith watched from the Council rescue ship, barely able to believe what he saw. They fight like predators, he whispered. Like apex predators defending their territory. High Chancellor Vemura stood beside him, her crystal form pulsing with emotions she had never felt before. Fear, yes, but also hope. They are everything we are not. And that is exactly what we need. Admiral Hayes received the final reports with grim satisfaction. 23 human casualties, none fatal. 3 ships with damage that could be repaired. Complete victory, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Vrathri controlled hundreds of systems now. This battle had caught them by surprise. They would adapt. They would learn. The real war was just starting. She called her command staff together. Good work, people. But do not celebrate yet. We showed them we can fight. Now they know we are here. The next battle will be harder. Captain Mitchell nodded. What are our orders, Admiral? We keep fighting. We hit them again before they can recover. We show the galaxy that humanity does not back down. Hayes looked at each of her officers. This is what we do. This is what we have always done. We stand between civilization and the darkness. Today that darkness has a name. The Vrathri. And we are going to drive them back into the void where they belong? On the planet below, Sergeant Grant and her squad helped load the last civilians onto transport ships. The Kelrathi people looked at the human Marines with awe and gratitude. These strange aliens from a forbidden world had saved them when their own people could not. A young Kelrathi child, barely old enough to walk, approached Grant and touched her hand. The child said something in her own language that Grant did not understand. A translator provided the words. Thank you for protecting us. Grant knelt down to the child's level. You are safe now. That is what matters. As the transport lifted off, Grant looked up at the stars where the human fleet waited. They had won their first battle in a war that would test everything humanity had learned through centuries of fighting. They had shown the galaxy what Deathworlders could do, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the Vrathari Overmind learned that it had awakened something dangerous. Something that would not stop, would not surrender, and would not show mercy. Humanity had entered the galactic stage. The trembling had only just begun. News of the victory at Kelrith Prime spread through Council space like wildfire. One human fleet had done what entire Council armadas could not. But Admiral Patricia Hayes knew the truth. They had surprised the Vrathari. That advantage would not last. In the war room of the EDF Valiant, the command staff gathered around the holographic star map. Red zones showed Vrathari-controlled territory. It was growing every day. Captain Ryan Mitchell pointed at the latest intelligence reports. "They are learning from us," Mitchell said. "Their tactics are changing. They are reinforcing key systems and setting up better defenses." "Then we learn faster," Admiral Hayes replied. She looked at her officers. Colonel Andrews still wore his combat armor from the last ground operation. Commander Jake Morrison had dark circles under his eyes from flying constant patrols. Lieutenant Sarah Blake looked exhausted from analyzing data for weeks without real rest. "We are 15,000 people against millions. Maybe billions of enemies," said Major Chris Bennett, the fleet intelligence officer. "Even with better weapons and tactics, we cannot win through direct combat alone." Hayes nodded. "Which is why we will not fight that way. We hit their supply lines. We target their command structures. We make them chase us across the galaxy while we destroy everything they need to continue their advance. The Council is building new ships based on our designs. Until those arrive, we are all that stands between the Vrathari and total galactic conquest." The campaign that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries. The human fleet did not try to hold territory. They struck fast and disappeared before the enemy could respond. They found Vrathari supply depots and destroyed them. They identified command ships and took them out. They used every trick humanity had learned through thousands of years of warfare. Sergeant Lisa Grant became a legend during the Battle of Viridian Station. Her squad was trapped behind enemy lines with 50 Council civilians. For 3 days, they held a single defensive position against wave after wave of Vrathari warriors. They used every weapon they had, then used weapons taken from dead enemies. When those ran out, they made explosives from whatever materials they could find. When relief finally arrived, Grant and her squad had eliminated over 200 enemy fighters. She was standing on a pile of empty ammunition boxes, still shooting, when friendly forces reached her position. "About time you showed up," she said calmly, as if she had been waiting for a ride instead of fighting for her life. "Commander, Morrison's squadron pioneered new tactics that became standard across the fleet. They discovered that Vrathari command ships could be identified by how other ships moved around them. Take out the command ship first, and the entire formation would fall into chaos for critical seconds. Those seconds were enough. It is their strength and their weakness," Lieutenant Blake explained during a briefing. "The hive mind gives them perfect coordination, but they struggle with independent thinking. We excel at exactly that." Captain Mitchell became known for his aggressive tactics. During the Battle of the Helix Nebula, his ship, the Hammer, took heavy damage early in the fight. Most commanders would have withdrawn to repair. Mitchell pressed forward. "Captain, we have hull breaches on 5 decks, reported his executive officer, Commander Linda Ross. "Structural integrity at 40%. We should fall back." "Negative," Mitchell replied. "We are close to their command carrier. All weapons, focus on that target. Engineering, give me everything you have got." The Hammer continued fighting despite damage that should have forced a retreat. Mitchell trusted his crew to keep the ship together. They did not disappoint. The destroyer destroyed the Vrathari carrier, breaking their formation and allowing the rest of the fleet to achieve victory. The Hammer survived, barely. But the victory saved an entire sector. The cost kept mounting. Human casualties climbed. Ships bore the scars of dozens of battles. Crews worked around the clock with no breaks. Fatigue became as dangerous as enemy fire. Admiral Hayes walked through the medical bay during a rare, quiet moment. She stopped beside a bed where a young Marine lay. Corporal Tim Hughes was only 19 years old. He had lost both legs in a landing assault. "I am sorry, son," Hayes said quietly. Hughes managed a weak smile. "We are winning, though, right, ma'am?" "Yes, we are winning. And it was worth it. Just make sure we finish this." Hayes squeezed his shoulder gently. "I promise you, we will." 3 months into the campaign, reinforcements arrived. Council shipyards had been working day and night to build new vessels based on human designs. The ships arrived crewed by Council species, who had been training under human instructors. They were not as effective as human crews, not yet. But they were learning. And more importantly, they gave the exhausted human forces some relief. Ambassador Kelrith came aboard the Valiant to personally thank Admiral Hayes. "Your people have saved countless lives. The Council wishes to offer humanity full membership and a permanent seat on the High Council." Hayes looked at the tactical display showing Vrathri territory. It was still huge. "We appreciate the offer, Ambassador. But we are not done. Not until every single one of those creatures is gone. You will continue fighting? Even now, with reinforcements here, you could rotate back to Earth, rest, recover." Hayes shook her head. "We started this fight. We will see it through to the end." Kelrith studied the human admiral with wonder. "Your species truly does not know how to quit, does it?" "No," Hayes replied simply. "We do not." On the occupied world of Tertius 9, military intelligence had discovered something important. The Vrathri overmind itself, the central intelligence controlling the entire swarm, was located somewhere in this system. If they could destroy it, they might end the war. Colonel Andrews gathered his officers to plan the assault. "This is it. We go in with everything we have. Every Marine, every ship, every weapon. We find the overmind and we kill it. This ends the war." Sergeant Grant checked her plasma rifle one more time. Around her, Marines prepared for what might be their final mission. Nobody talked about the odds of success. Nobody talked about how many of them might not come back. They just prepared, as they always did. Captain Mitchell received his orders aboard the Hammer. His ship would lead the assault fleet, drawing enemy fire while ground forces deployed. It was the most dangerous position, which was exactly where Mitchell expected to be. Commander Morrison and the Death's Head Squadron would provide close air support against overwhelming enemy numbers. The fighters were worn down from constant combat. The pilots were exhausted, but they would fly anyway. Lieutenant Blake ran the numbers. Success probability was low, very low. She reported this to Admiral Hayes. Hayes looked at the numbers, then looked at her people. They were tired, damaged, and outnumbered. But they were also the toughest warriors humanity had ever produced. They had fought across the galaxy and won every battle. "We are going in," Hayes decided. "Prepare the fleet for assault. This ends at Tertius 9. The final battle was about to begin. Humanity had come to save the galaxy. They would finish the job or die trying, and the galaxy would remember either way. The assault on Tertius 9 began at dawn, though on this dead world dawn only meant the darkness became slightly less complete. The Vrathri had stripped the planet of everything useful, leaving only their massive hive structures and the pulsing machinery that supported the overmind. "All ships, begin bombardment," Admiral Patricia Hayes ordered from the bridge of the EDF Valiant, the human fleet. Now reinforced with council ships that had learned to fight, opened fire with everything they had. Railgun rounds hammered the surface. Missiles streaked downward in waves. Energy beams carved glowing lines across the hive towers. The planet shook from the assault, but the Vrathri were ready this time. They had learned from previous defeats. Defense batteries emerged from hidden positions across the planet. Swarms of attack craft launched in numbers that filled the sky. The Battle of Tertius 9 would be the largest and bloodiest engagement of the entire war. Captain Ryan Mitchell watched his tactical display fill with red threat markers. There were so many enemies it seemed impossible. All weapons continuous fire. "Keep shooting." Do not stop for anything. The hammer shook from impacts as enemy fire found its mark. But the crew worked through the chaos with practiced calm. Engineering teams rerouted power around damaged systems. Damage control sealed breaches. Weapons crews kept the railguns firing until the barrels glowed red-hot. "Captain, we have lost our forward shields," reported Commander Linda Ross. "Hull integrity down to 50%. "Keep us in the fight," Mitchell replied. "The Marines need us." Below, drop ships carrying Colonel Andrews and his 800 Marines plunged through the hell of orbital combat. Explosions rocked the small craft. Some did not make it, hit by enemy fire and destroyed. But most got through. 2 minutes to landing. The pilot shouted over the noise. Andrews opened the communication channel to all units. "Listen up. Intelligence says the Overmind is in the central hive, 3 kilometers from our landing zone. We fight through whatever they throw at us, we reach that target, and we blow it to pieces. We end this war today. Are you ready?" "Hurrah!" 800 voices shouted as 1. Sergeant Lisa Grant checked her squad one last time. Private Danny Walsh looked scared but determined. Corporal Mike Torres gripped his heavy weapon. Lance Corporal Amy Price had that calm look she always wore before combat. "Stay sharp, watch your sectors, and we all go home," Grant told them. The dropships hit the ground hard. Ramps dropped. Marines poured out into a nightmare landscape. Vrathari warriors swarmed from every direction. Their numbers seeming endless, the Marines formed defensive positions instantly, creating overlapping fields of fire just like they had trained. Plasma rifles lit up the darkness. Grenades sent enemy bodies flying. The noise was deafening. "Move forward by squads," Andrews ordered. "Keep pushing." The human advance was brutal and relentless. Where enemies massed, the Marines called in airstrikes. When corridors were blocked, they blasted new paths. When they met Vrathari too large for normal weapons, they used rockets. Nothing stopped them. Commander Jake Morrison flew his fighter through the chaos, dodging between hive towers and incoming fire. His squadron provided close air support for the Marines below. "Death's Head leader, we have Marines pinned down at Grid 7-7, came an urgent call. "Copy, Death's Head, form on me." "We are going in close." Morrison led his fighters in a screaming dive, releasing weapons just meters above friendly forces before pulling up so hard his vision darkened from the G-forces. Behind them, the enemy position ceased to exist. "Thanks for the save," Grant transmitted from the ground. "Anytime, Sergeant." "Try not to need it again. No promises." The Marines pushed forward meter by meter. The hive corridors seemed designed to give every advantage to the defenders. But the humans kept advancing. Casualties mounted. Medics worked desperately. But nobody retreated. They had come too far to turn back now. In orbit, the fleet battle reached its peak. The Vrathari threw everything at the human ships. Desperate to stop the ground assault, Lieutenant Sarah Blake coordinated the fleet defense from her station. Admiral, massive enemy vessel emerging from behind the planet. "It is the largest thing we have seen yet." Hayes watched the huge bioship appear on her screen. It dwarfed even the biggest human carriers. "All ships, concentrate fire on that target. Kill it before it can deploy." The entire fleet focused on the supercarrier. Every weapon fired at once. But the massive vessel had shields unlike anything they had encountered. It absorbed incredible punishment and kept coming. Captain Mitchell saw his chance. "Helm, take us in close." "Weapons, prepare nuclear mines." "Sir, at that range we will be caught in the blast," Commander Ross warned. "I know. Do it anyway." The hammer accelerated directly toward the massive enemy ship. Its point defense systems tried to intercept the small destroyer, but there were too many other targets. At point-blank range, the hammer released its entire payload of nuclear mines and turned away. Engines screaming at maximum power. The enemy shields could stop energy weapons. They could absorb kinetic impacts. But they could not contain multiple nuclear explosions from inside their defensive perimeter. The supercarrier broke apart. The explosion was so large it was visible from the planet's surface. Dozens of smaller enemy ships were caught in the blast. Mitchell gripped his chair as his ship shook from the shockwave. Damage report? Heavy radiation exposure, multiple system failures, but we are still flying, sir? Then we are fine. Get us back in formation. On the ground, Colonel Andrews and his Marines reached the entrance to the central hive. It was defended by Vrathri warriors larger and more heavily armored than any they had seen before. Elite guards, Andrews noted. We must be close. All heavy weapons, concentrate fire. Clear us a path? What followed was the most intense close combat of the entire war. Marines used flamethrowers in tight spaces. They detonated explosives that brought down sections of the hive. They fought hand-to-hand when ammunition ran low. The fighting was brutal and personal. Sergeant Grant's squad was first to breach the inner chamber. What they found was almost beyond description. A massive biological entity that was part creature and part machine, pulsing with terrible intelligence. The Overmind. Plant the charges? Andrews ordered, running in with the demolition team. The Overmind fought back with psychic attacks. Some Marines fell to their knees, overwhelmed by visions of horror. But others pushed forward, driven by determination that the alien mind could not understand. Grant dragged Private Walsh forward when he collapsed, screaming. Move, Marine! Do not let it win. The demolition team worked fast, placing charges at weak points in the chamber structure. Around them, Marines held off waves of defenders pouring in from every entrance. Charges set? Reported Warrant Officer Carl Newman. 5-minute timer. All units fall back. Andrews ordered. Fighting retreat. Move. The Marines withdrew through the hive, still fighting every step. The Vrathri seemed to sense what was coming, and threw everything at the retreating humans. Corporal Torres's weapon ran out of ammunition. He dropped it, pulled his sidearm, and kept shooting. Lance Corporal Price dragged a wounded Marine, refusing to leave anyone behind. They emerged from the hive with seconds to spare. Drop ships swooped in, picking up Marines even as they ran. Grant was last aboard her ship, throwing Private Walsh through the door before diving in herself. Go! She shouted to the pilot. The drop ships cleared the blast zone just in time, from orbit. Admiral Hayes watched the central hive explode. Secondary explosions rippled outward as the biological systems failed. The Overmind died, and with it, the coordination of the entire Vrathri swarm collapsed across the planet, and across every Vrathri-held system the hive mind fell apart. Individual warriors kept fighting, but without direction. The tide turned instantly. All ships pursue and destroy, Hayes ordered. End this. The battle continued for 3 more hours as human and council forces eliminated the disorganized enemy. When silence finally fell, it felt strange after so much noise. The war was over. Humanity had won. The war was over, but the work was far from done. For 6 months after the Battle of Tertius 9, human and council forces hunted down the remaining Vrathri scattered across the galaxy. Without the Overmind to guide them, the enemy fought with desperate ferocity, but no coordination. They were dangerous, but no longer unstoppable. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood on the bridge of the EDF, valiant as the fleet jumped back into Sol System. Earth appeared on the view screen, blue and beautiful, exactly as she remembered. It had been almost a year since they left. It felt like a lifetime. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes, she transmitted. Mission complete. You have all performed with honor and courage beyond measure. I am proud to have served with every one of you. Welcome home. The return to Earth was bittersweet. The planet had sent 15,000 warriors to save the galaxy. 12,000 came back. 3,000 names would be added to memorials, families would receive flags, and children would grow up without parents. Captain Ryan Mitchell walked off his ship and into the arms of his wife Lisa. She held him tight, feeling him shake slightly. He had been strong for so long, in command of a warship through dozens of battles. Now he could finally let go. You did it, Lisa whispered. You saved them all. We did what we had to do, Mitchell replied quietly. But the cost was high. His children hugged his legs, too young to fully understand where their father had been or what he had done. Mitchell knelt and held them, grateful for this moment. Commander Jake Morrison found civilian life strange and difficult. The sounds of traffic startled him. He woke at odd hours, reaching for weapons that were not there. Crowds made him nervous. The counselors said it was normal, that many combat veterans experienced this. They called it adjustment. Morrison attended every reunion of the Death's Head Squadron. They were the only ones who truly understood what they had been through. They did not need to explain the nightmares or the sudden moments of panic. They just sat together, sharing silence and memories. Sergeant Lisa Grant was promoted to gunnery sergeant and assigned to train new Marines. She was harder on recruits than any other instructor, demanding perfection in every drill. But her students respected her absolutely. She wore her scars openly and spoke honestly about what combat really meant. "War is not glorious," she told her recruits during their first day. "It is necessary sometimes, but never glorious. You will do terrible things to survive. You will lose people you care about. But if you must fight, fight with everything you have. Be the best warrior you can be because lives depend on it." The recruits listened with wide eyes. They had all heard stories of the HFY War. Now they were being taught by one of its heroes. Colonel Kevin Andrews retired from active service and wrote a book about the war. He called it Fighting the Swarm: Human Military Doctrine in Galactic Warfare. It became required reading at every military academy, human and alien alike. Council species studied human tactics, trying to understand how such a small force achieved such complete victory. Lieutenant Sarah Blake took a position with the new Galactic Defense Integration Office. Her job was helping Council species adapt human military knowledge to their own capabilities and cultures. It was challenging work. Many species struggled with the aggressive nature of human tactics. But slowly, they learned. 3 months after the war ended, the Galactic Council held a special session. Ambassador Kelrith proposed a resolution that passed without a single vote against it. Humanity would be granted full council membership with a permanent seat on the High Council. More importantly, they would lead the creation of a new galactic defense force. "The humans taught us a vital lesson," High Chancellor Vemra told the assembled representatives. "Peace is not the absence of the ability to make war. It is choosing not to make war when other options exist. But when war becomes necessary, it must be fought with skill and determination. Humanity has both. They will help ensure the galaxy remains free." But bringing humanity into galactic society was not simple. Council species were disturbed by human culture. They watched human entertainment and were shocked by how often it featured violence and conflict. They saw human history and could not understand how one species could fight itself. So many times, during one tense council session, a delegate from the Lorani Collective questioned whether humans truly belonged among civilized species. "Your entire civilization seems built around conflict," the delegate argued. "Your history is written in blood. Your heroes are warriors. Is this what we want representing the Council?" Admiral Hayes, now Earth's primary ambassador to the Council, stood to respond. She had chosen not to wear her uniform today, but everyone knew who she was and what she had accomplished. "Delegate, you are correct," Hayes began. "Humanity has a violent past. We have fought wars over resources, beliefs, territory, and sometimes for reasons we have since forgotten. We are not proud of this. But we learned from it. We learned that war should be avoided whenever possible. We also learned that when war cannot be avoided, hesitation costs lives." She paused, looking around the chamber at species who had, until recently, never experienced war. "You asked for our help because we knew how to fight. We came because it was right. We bled beside your people, died defending your worlds, and asked for nothing except the chance to stop a threat to all of us. If that makes us unsuitable for the Council, perhaps the Council needs to reconsider what civilization truly means." The chamber fell silent. Then Ambassador Kelrith stood and began clapping. Others joined. Soon the entire chamber was standing in respect. The vote was taken. Humanity retained its seat. The path forward was set. 1 year after the war, a memorial ceremony was held on Luna. A massive wall of black stone bore the names of every human and Council species member who died fighting the Wrathery. Representatives from across the galaxy attended. Admiral Hayes gave the dedication speech. She spoke of sacrifice and duty. She spoke of the cost of defending civilization. She read names of those lost, her voice never wavering, though tears streamed down her face. "We did not ask for this war," she concluded. "But when it came, we met it without fear. Not because we are naturally brave, though many acted with great courage. Not because we are exceptionally strong, though we found strength we did not know we had. We fought because someone had to, and we were able. Let this memorial remind us of what was lost. Let it remind us why we must always be ready to defend what matters." In the years that followed, the Galactic Defense Force grew into a powerful organization. Human advisors taught tactics and strategy. Council species brought their own innovations. Together they created something new, a military that balanced human effectiveness with Council values, but humans remained the core of the most elite units. When new threats emerged, it was human-trained forces that responded. When the Kryloth insurgency threatened the outer systems 3 years later, human strike teams ended it in weeks. When first contact was made with the Andrelian Empire, a militaristic species from beyond Council space, Admiral Hayes negotiated a treaty backed by a fleet that made the cost of war clear. Captain Mitchell, now promoted to Admiral, joked during a staff meeting that humanity had become the galaxy's unofficial protectors. "We are the ones they call when talking fails," he said. "The ones who make hard choices so others do not have to." Life on Earth continued. The economy boomed with galactic trade. New recruits joined the military, inspired by stories of the Wrathery War. Families mourned their losses but took pride in what had been. Accomplished veterans of the war gathered regularly. They shared memories that only they truly understood. They spoke of friends lost and battles won. They carried the weight of what they had done, both proud and burdened. The galaxy had been saved. Civilization endured, and humanity stood watch, ready for whatever came next. Because that was what Deathworlders did. They protected those who could not protect themselves. They stood against the darkness. And if the galaxy trembled at their march, it was a small price for the peace they provided. 20 years had passed since the Battle of Tertius 9. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted when the Wrathery first appeared. The Council now had a real military. Dozens of species who once knew only peace now understood the price of defending it. And at the center of it all stood humanity. The Deathworlders who had saved civilization. Gunnery Sergeant Lisa Grant stood before a new class of Marine recruits. She was 45 now, her hair showing gray, her body marked with scars from a dozen battles. But her eyes held the same intensity they always had. 20 years ago, the galaxy learned that peace requires strength, she told the young faces watching her. You were children then. Maybe you do not remember the fear, the uncertainty. But I remember. I remember fighting through alien hives, watching friends die, wondering if we would survive the next hour. She walked along the line of recruits, looking each one in the eyes. You are here because you want to serve, because you understand that what we do matters. The galaxy is not perfectly safe. It never will be. There are always threats, always challenges, and humanity stands ready to face them. Not because we love war, but because we love what we protect. The recruits stood straighter. They knew Sergeant Grant's reputation. She had been at Kelroth Prime at Viridian Station. At Tertius 9, she had fought the worst battle in galactic history and survived. If she said something was important, they believed it. Admiral Ryan Mitchell walked through the halls of the new Galactic Defense Headquarters on Mars at 62. He should have retired years ago. But the Council kept asking him to stay, to lead, to share his experience. His wife understood. She always had. He stopped at a window overlooking the training grounds. Below, humans and aliens practiced joint operations. Council species who once could not imagine violence now moved with purpose and discipline. It was strange to see, but also reassuring. Commander Jake Morrison, now a colonel himself, joined Mitchell at the window. "Remember when it was just us against the swarm?" "Every day," Mitchell replied. "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? Turning the galaxy into warriors?" Morrison considered the question. "We gave them the tools to defend themselves. What they do with those tools is their choice. But yes, I think about it. I think about all of it." They stood in comfortable silence. Two veterans who had been through hell together and understood what it meant. Ambassador Kelrith, now retired from the council, wrote his memoirs in his quarters on the Zentari homeworld. He was old by his species standards, his bioluminescent skin dim and flickering, but his mind remained sharp. He wrote about the day the council decided to contact Earth, about the fear and hope mixed together, about watching humans fight with a ferocity that both terrified and inspired, about learning that strength and civilization were not opposites. "We were wrong to quarantine them," he wrote. "We called them too violent, too dangerous. But when danger came for us, they were our salvation. Perhaps true civilization is not the absence of warriors, but warriors who choose peace." High Chancellor Vemera, still leading the council after all these years, addressed the annual memorial service at the Galactic Monument on Luna. Every year, beings from across the galaxy gathered to remember those lost in the HFY War. "We gather today to honor the fallen," Vemera said, her crystalline form glowing in the sunlight. "They came from many worlds, many species, but they fought as one. They showed us that when facing extinction, old divisions mean nothing. We are all children of the same universe." She paused, looking at the wall of names behind her. So many names. So many lives ended too soon. The humans taught us more than how to fight. They taught us why we fight. Not for conquest or glory, but for survival, for protection, for the future. Let us never forget this lesson. In a quiet bar near the old Luna base, veterans of the expeditionary fleet gathered. They did this every year on the anniversary of their return to Earth. The group was smaller now. Some had died from old age or accidents. But those who remained valued this time together. Grant bought a round for everyone. They raised their glasses in the ritual toast they had performed for 2 decades. "To absent friends," Grant said, her voice steady despite the emotion. "To absent friends," the others echoed. They drank and remembered. They told stories that had been told 100 times before but never got old. They laughed at jokes only they understood. They honored the memory of those who never came home. Later, as the gathering ended, Grant stood outside looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Kelrith Prime, where it had all begun. Somewhere out there was Tertius 9, where it had all ended. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries. A young woman approached her, barely 20 years old. "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you Gunnery Sergeant Grant? The one from the HFY War?" Grant turned. "I am. Can I help you?" The young woman hesitated. "My grandfather was Private Danny Walsh. He served in your squad. He died 5 years ago, but before he passed, he told me stories. He said you saved his life at Tertius 9. Grant remembered. A young, terrified Marine she had dragged through the hive, refusing to leave him behind. Walsh had survived the war, gone home, raised a family. "Your grandfather was a good Marine," Grant said softly. "He did his duty with courage. He always said you were the toughest person he ever met, but also the most caring. He said you never left anyone behind?" "We were all in it together," Grant replied. "That is what made us strong." The young woman smiled. "I enlisted last month. I want to serve like he did." "Like you did?" "To protect what matters." Grant looked at this young recruit, seeing the same determination she had once felt. The cycle continued. Each generation learning from the last, carrying forward the lessons bought with blood and sacrifice. "Then train hard and remember why you serve," Grant told her. "The galaxy is mostly peaceful now, but it stays that way because people like us stand ready. Your grandfather understood that. Now you will too." As the young woman walked away, Grant thought about the future. Humanity had changed the galaxy. The Deathworlders who once were quarantined now defended civilization. The warriors who once were feared now were honored, but the cost had been real. 3,000 names on the memorial wall. Countless more bearing scars, physical and mental. Families changed forever. Lives interrupted by war and never quite the same after. Was it worth it? Grant asked herself that question often. Every time she concluded yes. Because the alternative was extinction. Because standing against evil, even at great cost, was the right thing to do. On Earth, in classrooms and military academies, young people studied the HFY War. They learned tactics and strategy. They learned about courage and sacrifice. But most importantly, they learned that peace was not free. It was a gift protected by those willing to fight for it. The galaxy would remember. When Deathworlders went to war, the stars themselves trembled. But when Deathworlders stood guard, civilization slept soundly. Admiral Mitchell retired finally at 65. At his ceremony, he spoke briefly to the assembled officers and dignitaries. For 20 years, people have thanked me for saving the galaxy. But I did not save it alone. Thousands of warriors, human and alien, stood together against the darkness. They are the real heroes. I just had the honor of serving alongside them. He looked out at the audience, seeing faces young and old, human and alien, all united by the common cause of defending peace. The galaxy is safer now than when we first went to war. But safety is not permanent. Each generation must choose to defend what the last generation built. Each generation must decide what they value enough to fight for. I believe you will make the right choice. Because that is what we do. That is what we have always done. The applause was long and genuine. That night, Mitchell stood with his wife on their porch, watching the stars. Somewhere up there, the galaxy continued spinning. Threats would emerge. Challenges would appear. But humanity would face them, as they always had, because Deathworlders did not quit. They did not surrender. They stood firm when others fell. They carried the burden so others could live free. The war was over. The fight continued. And humanity stood ready. Always ready. That was the true legacy of when Deathworlders went to war.